Hey everybody, I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks. And today I have Mike Unger with me, host of On the Mic with Gen X. Welcome, Mike. How you doing over there?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I just want to let everybody know if they haven't come over and checked it out yet, they'll notice the difference is even though it's the same subject matter, I can be a little sharper and I can sometimes cut a little deeper in my delivery. So it's just fair warning on occasion.
Yeah,
Not
no
always,
problem.
but sometimes.
Yeah, we don't mind cutting a little deeper. Gen X doesn't. So where are you at over there, Mike? Where are you located?
Actually, right now, I am way up north. I am actually in Canada,
Oh,
in the middle. Yeah. In the province of Saskatchewan, which most people have never heard of, never seen. I moved back here 4 years ago. I was living in the States just below, down in Washington in the Northwest. And then moved here in summer of 2020.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to live in Washington. I lived in the Yakima Valley. And I was stationed in Fort Lewis for about a year and a half, something like that. So that was my stomping ground for a little while. I moved around a lot as a kid. So did you go up to Canada? Were you running away from global warming?
No, I was just in general running away from all the crazies in 2020.
Oh, all right.
And I actually grew up here, and here, when all that was going on, it was pretty normal. So come back here and it was like everything was open. You could go do stuff. So it was getting away from all the really weird stuff of people trying to spray you down with something when you walked in somewhere. So I'm just like, you know what, things get too crazy. You go where there's less people and where, if everything was going to burn down, I was going to go in the bush. So.
Yeah, it stayed pretty relaxed here in Florida. There weren't any mandatory anything really. You didn't have to stay home from work. You didn't have to stay in your house or get a shot nothing was mandatory in Florida during that time. So I was pretty lucky.
That's good. The only thing they had here was the hospitals, of course. But I mean, if a hospital says so, go ahead. There's plenty of sick and vulnerable people in there all the time. So
yeah,
I see hospitals as different, but for the most part, it was pretty normal here.
Okay. Was it completely insane in Washington? Because I hear a lot of stuff. I haven't been in Washington since I was in Washington when I joined the Army. So since 1992, 91, 92, something like that, and I haven't been back. But
it was. Yeah, I was gonna say, not to cut you off. It was crazy. You would go into a store, and another person would want to demand where you come from and want to demand your ID. Not even a store employee or manager or law enforcement or anything. Just somebody demanding, because if you didn't live within a block, they didn't want you in there.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Not everybody was that crazy, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I still see people driving around, even here in Florida. But we get a lot of people from New York and these other places too. So, but I see people.
Well, you're big destination states.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, we get a lot of vacationers and stuff down here, and I see people driving around in cars by themselves wearing masks today. That's still happening today. I just shake my head when I see that stuff.
Even then, it didn't make sense. I'm like, what? You scared you're going to get yourself sick? Like, come on.
Even at the height of the fear, the COVID scare, it didn't make sense. It sure as hell doesn't make sense today. Yeah.
Yeah, same as I seen. Even then, when you'd see people, and it's clearly husband and wife in the car, both wearing a mask because they don't want to get it from each other. I mean, you live in the same house. Presumably, you're sleeping in the same bed. I mean, wearing a mask in the car. Wearing a mask in the car is not going to save you.
No. Yeah, I hear a lot about that and the conspiracy theories on that. And
Yeah.
like, was it, was that just a test to see how far they could push us and what percentage of the population would just comply with all that insanity, all that bullshit? And that, I kind of have to agree with that it seemed a lot like a test.
I believe it was the second test.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anybody remembers in 2009, the H1N1 virus that went around.
Yeah.
They were trying to pump everybody with an experimental shot then, but the doctors were like, no, don't. It's never been tested. They rolled it out way too quickly, and they couldn't get anybody to do it. And then, of course, the COVID one comes along, and it was nothing new. It wasn't a virus we hadn't seen. I mean, they called it COVID, but it was actually SARS, and we already had a SARS virus run through. And yeah, I think they were pushing just to see how much they could panic everybody.
Yeah.
And here's one that got people is the Canadian government originally wanted to run the shutdown in the first week of January, not March like everybody did. It was the original plan was to start shutting everything down in January.
Okay.
But this is before they even told everybody about the virus. But they determined it would take at least 2 months to prepare everybody to accept the idea that you couldn't go somewhere, that they would have to spend 2 months feeding it to you in the news.
Uh-huh.
And they did. And I'm just like, I think it was a test. See just how much the population will take.
Yeah.
And most people took it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think in retrospect now, it's kind of backfired on them because that just served to wake up a whole lot of people,
Yep.
A lot of people were, including my wife. I mean, she was all scared about it and stuff when it first started. They first started talking about it, and it was coming over here. And when it first started coming around on the news and all that, and she was really scared. And I told her it's nothing. Listen to what they're saying. It's comorbidities. It's you people with diabetes and old people. Those are the people who need to be scared. Young, healthy people don't need to be afraid, and we're healthy. Nothing to be afraid of. But the news and the fearmongers on the news had her scared. And I'm sure there were millions of people like her that were afraid.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you get, they pound you with the information and with that line that this is how dangerous it is. This is how dangerous it is. And you don't hear anything else. People get afraid.
Yeah.
And they'll do whatever it takes to not be afraid.
And I remember, and then the confusion that they showed in there, because I remember when Fauci first came out and told everybody that don't wear a mask, it's a waste of time. If even, it could do more harm than good because you'd be constantly messing with the mask, and you'd be transferring it that way. You're more likely to touch something and get the virus on you and then touch your face messing with the mask and get the virus around your face. So a mask is a waste of time. And then 6 months later, you absolutely had to wear a mask to save the people around you. And if you didn't, you're basically a murderer. You know what I mean? So, the confusion, I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was just incompetence. They were just our leaders are just that stupid.
Yeah, I've heard it put, the best way I heard someone put it the one time is, I have to wear a diaper because you might crap your pants.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just like, that's exactly how it felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when they would tell people if a restaurant was open, you could sit at the table and didn't have a mask on, but you had to wear it going to the table.
Yeah.
Nothing made any sense, and I honestly believe the whole thing was to determine how much people will take, and what rules will they follow without question.
And not only that, just with the COVID rules and stuff, how much will we take with their censorship and their silencing us? Because they completely deplatformed like a Dan Bongino got completely taken off of YouTube and stuff
Yep.
for talking about that stuff. I mean, they censored and squashed all kinds of information. I think that was part of the test too, just to see how much censorship and stuff they could get away with.
Doctors got fired. Thousands of nurses lost their jobs.
Yep.
You know, like it was ridiculous, and nobody's ever come after and even said they were wrong officially. They you know.
Oh yeah.
I don't think anybody will. They're just going to it'll be its thing, and then in a few years they're going to try and run the next one down the pipeline.
Yeah.
And see just how far they can go. And it might be something different this time. They won't use a virus. They'll use something else.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of felt like after, because for the way they dragged it on, it kind of felt like the world after 9/11.
Yeah.
Which I keep forgetting now. There's a whole generation that are now in their 20s that have no idea what that was.
Exactly. Yeah. That changed everything.
And for like the first year, the world was on edge. I woke up that morning like everybody else, turned on the TV and thought, we are at war. This is it. Mm-hmm. It's full on, you know.
Yeah, the world had changed.
Yeah. But it was the whole terror alert system, the way they kept dragging it on for years and years and years with the color. You'd get up every day and it'd be like, it's a red day today, so I got to be extra scared.
Yeah.
Or an orange day today. I mean, come on, if you guys are doing your job, you shouldn't have to put it out on the news every day. Just go do your job.
Yeah.
Go get them, shut it down, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell me that it was close that day, you know.
Yeah.
Only tell me when you're like, we can't stop them, they're going to get it done, so don't go there. But not just, well, it might be, or it's an undisclosed, or we think there might be somebody who thought about it one time. You know, and they dragged it on so long that nobody listened anymore.
Yeah, true.
And that kind of is what happened with the COVID thing too. If you stretch it out way too long, people stop listening.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, it's every day. You know, I'm going about my business. It doesn't change.
Yeah. And I think another thing that COVID did, because I saw a marked change after COVID in the work ethic of the younger generation, because everybody got those checks. Nobody worked, and everybody got those government checks. I forget what they're called now. Do you remember?
Well, there was different types, because I can't remember what the ones were in the States.
But we were getting checks down here, government checks, and they didn't want people to go to work. I mean, I still worked, but I still got the check, you know. I was just in Florida, so I still got to go to work. Hmm?
I worked more. I never had so much work than when everybody else was trying to not work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I remember businesses, McDonald's and Burger King, you know, businesses like that, they would just shut down due to nobody would come to work. They couldn't, for like a year after that, after everything had blown over and all that, they just couldn't get anybody to come to work. Nobody wanted to work.
See, and then I was, continue. Sorry.
Oh, it's gotten a little bit better since then, but the work ethic of the younger generations have just nosedived after that. They
big time.
Yeah.
And it was through that time, even in Canada, it was worse, because if the person had been living in Canada and working, and they even gave this to foreign workers that were only up for the season.
Oh.
And they got to stay for the entire shutdown because they didn't get the actual work they were promised. They were allowed to stay until they could go back, and it was like 2 years.
Oh, really?
And the government in Canada gave them $2,000 a month for like 2 years.
Yeah, the government
per
giving our money away.
Person. So if there was a family of 3, they would get up to $6,000 every month.
That's insane. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like they were spending, you know, because the population is 1/10, about 10% the size of the U.S., and they were spending like $40 billion a month handing out money.
Yeah, y'all's money just handing it to immigrants. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was busting my ass. Actually, those years I was the best money making years I had.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, half of it was going into everybody else's
Yeah.
pocket to not work, and we had lots of work. We couldn't get people. We would have, as I was doing commercial construction, and we would be on a job site where there should be a minimum 10 guys on our crew, and it would be me and one guy that worked part-time.
Holy shit! Yeah,
And we couldn't get anybody. And they're like, oh, but I get this money. I'm like, but we're offering you more. You're going to get way more. You're going to get that every week instead of every month.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's insane.
No
I'm just drive, like, none. Yeah.
And it got taken away because they didn't have to do anything. The kids that were in school, I think that created a problem with the way they handle things out in public and socially, because they didn't get to go home. They didn't have to actually finish like their last year or last 2 years. So they move on without actually finishing the education.
Yeah.
Which most people are lacking in when they're done anyway and complete the system.
Yeah.
But I just keep waiting for the next one to come down the pipeline.
Yeah, there's no telling what it is, what it's going to be.
No, and I'm going to sit this one out. I'm just gonna. It's either going to be just wall myself up down in the bunker, or grab the big insulated wall tent, and me and the family are heading into the bush, and you guys can fight it out. It's had enough.
The bush is going to be crowded with Gen Xers, though. They'll all be in the bush. Yeah. But yeah, I was thinking about that a while ago, and it seems to me like they pull something like that every 10 years. If you think about it, 9/11 was in around 2001, right?
Yeah.
9/11, 2001. 10 years later, we got the economic crash.
Yep.
2009, 2010, right at the end of that decade, the beginning of the next one.
Yeah,
and
the
in
whole
2020,
housing bubble.
We got COVID. A full, almost exactly a decade later, we got COVID. And I keep hearing rumblings about the big reset supposed to happen in 2030. And I never really paid much attention to it before, but when I started looking at that decade cycle every 10 years, they hit us with something, you know what I mean? And they were completely different things. 9/11, and then an economic catastrophe in 2010, 2011, there somewhere, and then COVID in 2020.
Pandemic.
Yeah. So now in 2030, I'm thinking that it's going to be something. There's no telling what it's going to be. Probably alien attack, or
that's
a Bigfoot uprising or something. But
that's Bigfoot uprising. They're all going to come out of Washington State. That's their habitat.
Yeah.
The state there actually has that whole area set aside as protected Bigfoot natural habitat.
Are you serious?
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they actually use the name Sasquatch on the official paperwork, but it's protected habitat.
My dad was a horse trainer, so I rode horses a lot when I was younger, and me and him were up riding in Washington State and down a dusty road, and the dust was like real soft, like the consistency of flour. And I mean, like probably 40, 50 miles from any town or anything. I mean, literally in the middle of nowhere. And there we found some barefoot human tracks going across this dusty road, and they were relatively fresh, but they were coming out of thorns. I mean, thorns. A human being couldn't walk through them. There's no way. There would have been blood in the tracks, and then into the same thorns. So I don't know what that was. It always, it makes me think of Bigfoot. But I saw that with my own eyes. But I never bought into the whole Bigfoot thing, right? Even though I've seen some likely evidence of it, I guess it was something. But then I heard this guy the other day on a show, and he said, "Well, why haven't we ever found any Bigfoot bones? Why don't we find, anything, any kind of Bigfoot? Why don't anybody ever find a dead Bigfoot, carcass like we do deer and bear and everything else?" And that made a lot of sense to me. I was like, "Yeah, why not? Nobody's ever found a roadkill Bigfoot. We would if they existed,
Very, very, very true. But I mean, it was a little over 100 years ago that they discovered the first dinosaur fossils.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was watching one guy one time who was talking, did a good documentary about Bigfoot. And he believes that it's possible. We've just never gone deep enough to go look.
Yeah.
Into the forest, because we go off the roads and stuff, but then no one goes deep into the valleys in the Alpine that nobody goes into because you just don't come back.
Yeah.
And he likened looking for Bigfoot to when the Europeans were going over to Asia looking for the panda.
Oh, okay.
They heard about him, and they specifically sent expeditions for 150 years trying to find him and never did, and determined that it was a myth. They didn't exist. Right. Until one day an expedition was stopping there, and they had stopped for lunch, and while they were sitting there eating, one of the members of the expedition, according to the diary, looked over to his side, and there was a panda about 20 feet away, just munching away on some bamboo.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, they figured out what Yeti was. It turned out to be an undiscovered species of bear.
Yeah, okay.
So who
whenever
knows?
I hear about pandas, it reminds me of that movie Fight Club, where the narrator in there, he says that he wanted to shoot every panda that refused to breed in captivity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great movie. But yeah, when I think about that, the panda is a good example of that. When I was watching a documentary here, it's trapped by its diet. It can't even eat any kind of bamboo. It can only eat one kind of bamboo. And the bamboo that it eats is so deficient in nutrients that it can't hibernate like a normal bear. It's supposed to hibernate, but it can't. And then its milk is so deficient in nutrients that like 80% of the baby pandas die in the wild. That's just how they are. And so my point is that, I mean, sometimes nature just makes a mistake, evolution just makes a mistake. And sometimes these things, they're supposed to go extinct because they don't work, I mean, pandas are awesome. Don't get me wrong, but they're a messed up species as far as survival goes. They're not.
And they appear to be pretty dumb when you see them, but maybe that's just because we always see videos of ones in captivity. And they just kind of, humans get dumber in captivity too. I mean, look at the average person in a big city.
Yeah.
To me, that's captivity.
Yeah.
And they just.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, the internet is captivity for your mind,
Very much so.
I mean, think about the younger generation. Well, think about us back when we were kids. Me and my brother, we'd make slingshots and we'd go out there and make stuff. We'd make toys out of sticks and stuff and make rubber band guns and all this stuff. We didn't. Nowadays, all of that creation is already done for you online, Yeah,
we had the back of our place growing up. You went back about 30, 40 yards and you hit the trees. And it was trees for as far as you could go as a kid. That was the playground.
Yeah.
It was an endless adventure.
Yeah.
Everything from making slingshots to building tree forts to, cutting trails to go through there and walk. And geez, even there, I set up my first traps and snares in there. And, and people are like, really? I said, yeah. And I'd go home and They'd be like, what else you do? I said, when I'd go check my snares, I'd go home and I'd get the 22 and I'd go check. And they'd be like, how old are you? And I'm like, 7.
Yeah.
Right. And you were allowed to just walk off with, I'm like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had my first 22. Well, I can't say my first one. I might have had it earlier, but I specifically remember having a 22 when I was in the 2nd grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And my dad just didn't think anything about it. That was just the way it was supposed to be.
No, they were like, what? And I said, well, my dad taught me respect for it.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I said, and one of the last things he ever taught me is before you come back in the house, point it down at the dirt there and pull the trigger when you think it's empty. Make sure, So last thing you want to do is to have it go off in the house. I mean, that's one where I think of that, and then I see the younger people today, they got over-coddled. I don't think we gave them enough credit when they were little. Some people think it was, somehow learning things when you were young became taboo.
Yeah.
It's, let them be a kid. We were kids.
Oh, yeah.
It was a kid thing. Went out, had fun. Yeah. Chores too. I mean, you did stuff around the house. Now you got people in their 20s that still don't do their own laundry or have ever cooked for themselves
and have no idea how to do it, or they're lost.
Yeah. That's a big one there.
Think they can't. They can't. Oh, I can't do that. That's my pet peeve word when I hear a youngster, a young kid, 20s or whatever. Oh, I can't. You can't. That's because you've never been in a corner where you had to before. When you realize that you absolutely have to do something, then you realize you can. Oh, I can do it.
That was a lot of it. You learned it because you had to.
Yeah.
The most of the stuff I learned as a kid, I learned because I had to.
Oh, yeah, me too.
It's like I learned how to cook for myself because I had to. Yeah. I mean, I came home and my dad wasn't coming home until I was almost going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was out working all the time.
Yeah.
So you had to feed yourself. You had to clean yourself. You had to look after things. And I even learned to doctor myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of us did that.
A lot of it was you learned because if you went home with the wound and had to tell them what you were doing when you got hurt, you were going to get hurt again. Yeah. You weren't supposed to be there, or you weren't supposed to be doing that, or my dad's favorite. Why are you being so stupid?
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
That
one of the problems I think is that when you hear people talking about that, and I'm just relaying facts, right? This is just the way it was. Yeah. And I've said a couple times on my show that nobody cared. Our parents didn't care, not that they didn't care whether we lived or died, but they didn't care if we scraped our knee or if we went out, and got hurt playing a little bit. They didn't care. Our teachers didn't care. Our teachers would sit out there on the playground and watch us just do dangerous stuff. And it was okay back then. Yeah. So you hear somebody relating that story to a younger person, and that sounds horrible to them. And yeah. But as a kid living in that time, it was freedom and it was wonderful. A scraped knee was nothing, compared to all that freedom. I'd rather, scrape both my knees and both my elbows every day than be locked up in the house all day back then.
See, it's funny you should mention it, because the video I was working on today, one of the things I talked about and pointed out in there was the difference in the teachers that we had as kids.
Yeah.
And I remember teachers that would throw an eraser at you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They would call you stupid to your face. They would, and then when it came down to it, your parents would come to the school and back the teacher.
Yeah.
It wasn't the school's fault that you got in trouble. It was your fault. It wasn't the school's fault that you didn't get your homework done. It was your fault.
No. Oh, yeah. That's one of the things that I feared was having a teacher get a hold of my parents because I was misbehaving. Yeah,
Yep.
that was my ass. Yeah.
I remember one. Oh, didn't mean to cut you off. I'm bad.
Oh no, I was just gonna say we had teachers that'd wrap you across the back of your hand with the ruler too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Swack you. You'd be turned. You have your head turned, talking to your buddy back, behind you, and then you feel that flat of that ruler pop you across the back of your hand. Yeah.
I remember one time I got in trouble at school, and I had to been, maybe fourth grade. Wasn't that old. And they were going to call my dad, and I panicked.
Oh,
I panicked so much they actually brought the minister into the school to talk to me from our church. And I'm like, anything, take away my lunches, my recess, put me in detention. I don't care. Don't call my dad.
Yeah.
That was the word, because there was nothing worse than if dad had to leave work to come to the school and deal with something you did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was the worst punishment you could ever have, because now you got a very angry dad.
Yeah.
And then a dad that's very angry, and on top of that, he's missing that half a day's pay.
Yeah, you cost him time and money.
Time and money, and that was in the time when they thought they had inflation and high interest. Now, I mean, back then, mortgages were running 12-15% interest rates.
Yeah.
So there was nothing scarier. That actually, I'm going to call your parents, was actually a threat that worked.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays.
Teachers, I had many a teacher grab me by the ear and give a twist and have me half bent over, dragging my butt down to the office and for talking back or saying, you can't tell me what to do. And they're like, really? Yank. And they got to give teachers that authority again. That would be one of them. But you have to start early. You can't start with the other kids. I don't know when it changed.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it'll be one teacher will abuse that authority. One teacher will do something outside of normal parameters, normal, healthy, discipline. And then that'll make national news, and they'll want to shut the whole thing down and change everything and make everything soft and pathetic. Yeah. Because this one teacher made national news.
That bugs me, because that person is going to do that whether they were a teacher or not.
Yeah.
It's the same as when people go after you get a cop that you abuses their authority, because the only reason they became there is, why hate all of them? That person is going to be that way whether they were in that profession or a teacher or a doctor or nurse or whatever. They are going to have that same attitude towards people because they have that little bit of authority.
Yeah.
It's a bad personality trait that just some people are just jerks.
Yeah, you're right.
There's nothing you can do about it.
And to change everything just because, there's one jerk, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me.
See, and I'm on the theory. See, a few more people need the odd punch in the throat, I think, because you'll have less jerks around if you can start actually.
Yeah. Throat punches should come back with authority, with force. Yeah.
Yeah,
that
big time.
Should be a normal thing. Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
It doesn't work. They get too carried away. Somehow things got way too soft.
Yeah.
Same as when they killed the way playgrounds were for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I remember ours, the bottom of all our stuff was concrete.
Yeah. Oh.
Or big chunks of gravel that if you got one in you, it put a hole in you when you fell on it, Yeah. Now everything is this weird rubber padding stuff. And I saw the report they did the one time, and when they changed out all them rocks and concrete for that weird padding stuff they put in all the kids' playgrounds, the number of broken arms and legs at the playgrounds actually went up.
Oh.
And I think it's because they led everybody to believe it's this false sense of security. Same as like, wear the mask, you won't get sick.
Yeah.
But you're more apt to touch something and touch your face and fiddle with the mask.
Yeah.
So you're probably more likely to get sick. You know, this false sense of safety. Oh, the ground is soft, so now I'm going to jump from twice as high.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You learn not to jump if you land the first time and knock the wind out of you.
Yeah. And digging gravel out of your knee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but hey, you know, they change everything. They made everybody too soft. We're partly to blame.
Oh yeah.
You know, we allowed it, and in some cases we went, well, you know, we don't want to be quite as tough on them as we, was on us, and I think that was a bit of a mistake in the end. You know,
but that's a society-wide thing. You know what I mean?
It is.
It's all of society should have put that in check. You know, hey, we're going too far. And from what I've seen with all of these topics, race, gender, education of children, discipline of children, all of this, it goes from way to one side of the spectrum, and the pendulum swings clear over to the other side to where it's just as bad, just in the opposite direction.
Yep.
So our playgrounds were completely dangerous. They were, they were unsafe. And then, the society shifted so far over, and instead of just making playground safe and making it so kids can have fun outside, they made the playground safe, but now it's to where the kids aren't even out there on the playground anymore. Kids are so safe that they don't even leave the house. So the playgrounds are irrelevant. They don't get used, and it's the pendulum swung too far.
Yeah.
I actually read a statistic that the average prison inmate spends more time outside than the kids, the younger generations do. Yeah,
I can believe it, because I mean, their screen and internet time is probably a little more regulated.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of them have TVs and cable and video game systems in their cells these days.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's insane though. But kids, when's the last time you saw a kid? I don't know how it is up there in Canada, but last time you saw a kid riding a bicycle outside or wearing a cast? When's the last time you saw a kid wearing a cast?
I can't even remember the last time I saw a kid in a cast.
Yeah. I mean, you remember in school, there used to be, the kid would be wearing a cast all the time. One kid, at least, would be walking down the hall on crutches with that big cast on their leg. And
it was usually broken wrist or something, or ankle.
And we'd all sign the cast, and after a while, it'd get like a muddy gray color. You couldn't even read the signatures anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't seen a kid in a cast in, I don't know how long. I can't even remember. But they just don't do stuff like that anymore.
I think some of that come about when some of these idiot parents started suing, especially when it come to school. Because a few times a year, the kid got the cast for something that happened at school.
Yeah.
They'd fall off the playground equipment, or, you're playing football without the pads during your lunch, or even though you're not supposed to do that. Oh, we won't, and then you do it anyway. And but then somewhere along the line, somebody got the idea. Usually, a lot of this stuff follows a lawsuit.
Yeah, true.
Somebody decided to sue.
Yeah,
and I think that's where a lot of it started.
Yeah.
It was some of it is somebody sued, and then all of a sudden nobody can have fun anymore.
Oh yeah.
That's what schools carried insurance for, in order to cover medical if a kid got hurt at the school. So why are you suing?
Yeah.
Like, if it happened at school, the school covered the expenses.
Yeah.
But they'd be like, oh, insurance. Damn lawyers.
Oh yeah, lawyers. Don't get me started.
we need a new reef out in the ocean somewhere, and I know how to start building the base of it. But you know,
yeah. Almost all of our politicians are lawyers, ex-lawyers. That's how they get
virtually.
get
Yeah, if anybody wants to, they go to law school, and then they get a minor in politics or economics or something to go with it, and they head on in. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be a lawyer. It doesn't pay very well. I was actually recently looking up the average salary of a lawyer in the United States is less than $80,000 a year.
Yeah, I believe it.
And that's because there's so many of them. I mean, they're like, oh, but this guy makes it. And I'm like, yeah, you have to be really good, though, to make that kind of money.
Or really cutthroat.
Yeah. Get lucky and have that case that people pay attention to. And then everybody comes to you and you can charge a ton of money and you can start charging that $1,000 an hour. But the average lawyer does not make that much.
Yeah.
I'm like, I make more than that working construction. So, I mean, I'm not going to spend $500,000 to become a lawyer. You know?
Yeah. and then you get fresh air and sunshine.
A lot of it. I like nothing more than being there and you're working and the fresh sawdust when you're cutting something and you're building. And the higher up I were, the nicer it is. Yeah. You know.
It's getting rough down here in Florida now. We're in the mid 90s, getting our, during the day. It's getting up into the mid 90s already. It's going to be a long, hot summer.
That's about where it tops out here, where I am now. Is if you do the conversion, it'd be about the mid 90s, sometimes into just break 100. But
really,
yeah. But in the winter, it can be as cold as minus 50.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was talking to someone one time in this winter, and they doing the live, and they said, "What's the temperature?" I said, minus 40. They said, "What is that in Fahrenheit?" And I said, "Once you get that cold, there is no difference.
Yeah.
They're actually the same. Minus 40 is minus 40. They are the same on both scales."
Yeah.
They're like, "Well, what do you do?" I'm like, "You still got to go to work."
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy because here in Florida, 40 degrees is cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. 40 degrees. So you're up there in negative 40.
You're acclimatized to it, though. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, I had an aunt and uncle that went to Tanzania, and he worked and lived there for 3.5 years. And when he came back, even springtime was cold.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he was in the African desert for 3 years, and then he come back and he's like, everything's cold. Even the summer here is kind of cold. Took him a couple years to get used to it.
Y'all still getting plenty of snow up there?
No, it's been gone for about a month where I am.
No, I mean year over year.
Year over year? This last winter, it was
warming wise.
Oh, lots of snow.
So
this year was an extremely lots of snow.
Oh, okay.
The first year I moved back here, the very first snowfall of the year was 2.5 feet.
Oh, all right.
So,
I mean, I keep mentioning on my channel that when I was a kid, the weather was the same back then that it is now, that it hasn't changed very much. It would get in the upper 90s and stay there all summer, and then it would cool off in the winter for a couple months, and then it would get back up in the upper 90s. And I remember it very clearly, and that's the way it is now. But then people tell me that, that's Florida. So I was interested about whether it's changed a lot, because I had it in my head that y'all don't get any snow up there in Canada anymore. You know what I mean?
No, it still comes about the same time every year. The area where I am now, it usually about Halloween is when you get the first snow.
Yeah.
People will go, "Oh, global warming because it didn't snow till Christmas." I'm like, I remember when I was a kid, a couple years it didn't snow until January.
Yeah.
And I lived even further up north.
Is the snow itself any hotter?
Nope.
It's the same snow.
Nope. It's still the same.
I'm just trying to figure out what has changed in all this climate change I keep hearing about.
Not much. I mean, people will go, "Oh, it gets so hot in the summers," and then not a week later, they're complaining about how cold it is.
Oh, I'm one of them, though. Yeah, I complain all summer long about the heat. Then when it gets cold, I'll complain about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, like the last 2 days, here it is, middle of May, and the last 2 days we've been sitting near, well, if I do the conversion, well, near freezing.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, it was about 40.
Huh, in May?
Yeah, about
like
5 degrees Celsius.
In the mid 90s, and we're not going to see a break until probably.
Well, we were just in the mid 90s, and now but here in May, it can go one day, it can be mid 90s. The next 2 days, it can be down to low 40s, high 30s, and then 2 days later, it's back up again.
Okay.
And that is normal for this time of year. It's a transition.
All right.
Because you're still close enough that if everything changes, it can suck down that Arctic air still.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that makes sense.
But I got one guy that watches my live all the time and talk to him, and even text him on the phone, and he's down in New Mexico, and there's been quite a few times in the last couple months he's been colder than we have been. So,
oh yeah,
I mean.
Yeah, we actually got snow in Florida, like a foot or something, 6 inches or a foot of snow in Florida. Not down here where I'm at in Central Florida, but in Northern Florida. Yeah, it hasn't snowed in, I don't know how many decades, but we got a good amount of snow in Northern Florida this year.
Jeez. I just ran into a kid the other day here. He had to be about 20, and I noticed him because he had Florida plates on his car. But I'm just like, where are you going right now? I mean, he drove up all the way, and it was an older, beat up car. I'm surprised it made it that far. He started out at St. Augustine, and he all the way up. And I said, where are you going? And he's like, Banff. And I said, you ever been there before? And he said, no. And I said, well, you will love it. You'll love it there. It's a world all unto itself. It's an amazing resort and place to see, and it's all protected land, and it's so they said you'll love it. But I'm like, what? You just out of the blue decided you're going to drive all that way? Wouldn't have impressed me so much if it was somebody our age. I mean, the idea of taking off and traveling somewhere and he was by himself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's surprising to see a younger person doing stuff like that.
Yeah, but he was a little afraid people wouldn't take Canadian or American money. And I said, oh no, all stores here do. They have a button for it in the store, so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, all the stores have a button, so it automatically even does like the currency conversion and everything, so.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, it's one thing that I'm leery of in the future is that whole digital ID and digital currency.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I have, and people won't like what I have to say, but that whole thing is tied in with, how the TSA's been talking about the new AI facial recognition system that they're putting in and have been putting in for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
That's a United Nations thing.
Yeah.
And of course they won't admit it. They're saying oh no, we're not tied into that. But the idea is they want to, once that's all in and everywhere, they start with the real ID and everything, get you used to it, but then they're going to get rid of the physical ID because every single place will be tied in together with this facial recognition software.
Yeah.
And it's so good now, even if you had mask and makeup and even, they can tell who you are.
Oh, yeah.
And that bothers me.
Yeah, it bothers me too.
It really bothers me. I mean, I
And
have
a
no
lot of
problem when I
people,
go through customs if you want to take my passport and check it in the computer you have there. But
yeah,
the idea that I'm walking along and 32 cameras are, running me in every system around the world, and everybody's just gladly linked in. Everybody just does it gladly.
yeah, that's what I don't get. I mean, I hear that thing all the time, like, "Oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't have anything to hide." And I would agree with that. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't have anything to hide. But it's just the principle of the thing.
Yeah.
I'm an individual. I'm a human being. I don't want to be stalked and photographed and scanned and all this shit. I just don't want that. Just for the point and principle of it, I'm against it.
Well, people willingly go for it because they no longer hand out books like 1984 to read in school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
And if you mention anything, they throw the word conspiracy theorist around because it automatically makes you sound like you're crazy.
And just about anything, if they can tie convenience into it now, right? If they can sell you on the convenience of it, oh, we're going to, track you and monitor you every second of the day for the rest of your life, but you won't have to pull out your debit card anymore. They'll just do a retinal scan on, and you just pay for it like that. You don't even have to carry a debit card anymore. You know how inconvenient those debit cards are, how difficult they made your lives. Well, you can do away with those now. You know what I mean? And people would just swallow that shit hook, line, and sinker.
Oh yeah. And once it's all digital, what's going to happen? All they have to determine is that they don't like you or declare you subversive and shut you off.
Yeah.
You are out of the system.
Account.
Yep.
Shut off your vehicle. If you got a new vehicle, it won't even start. Because these new vehicles with the chips in them and stuff.
Yeah, they can already shut them off remotely. Of course, they pitch that by going, it's the greatest anti-theft device.
Yeah.
If someone steals your car, we'll shut it off. I'm like, well, no, I'll just get a standard. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen too many videos of car thieves jumping in a car and going, what is this? And they can't get a standard started.
Look at that stick shift and go,
what's three pedals in this extra stick do?
We're not taking this one. Let's go find another one. But yeah, all that, any kind of that Big Brother stuff, that surveillance state and all that shit, that rubs me the wrong way. I don't like even a hint of any of that.
It does. Well, I'm doing my basic life. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
You want to have every square inch of the courthouse, police station, the Capitol building, any government building covered, go right ahead.
Yeah.
And I expect when I go to those places that I am being looked at from every single angle. But other than that, you don't need to keep all this stuff because that's the one thing, like, the TSA is claiming the information's not kept after you're cleared.
Yeah, right.
Does anybody really believe that that's being deleted?
Yeah.
It's like, no.
And that's like those Amazon and those Google things that you talk to,
Yeah.
And Amazon Alexa and all that. And they say that they don't record your voice in any way. They don't. But everything you say, literally every word that comes out of your mouth, that Alexa thing has to write onto a hard drive and then compare it against the word Alexa to see if it's the keyword. That's just how computers work. It's got to listen to everything you say, record it, and then compare it to Alexa, to the word Alexa to see if you're talking to Alexa. So whether you say Alexa or not, it's still listening and recording, People don't understand that. They think that somehow magically it's just going to ignore everything until you say that. No, it does not. It cannot. It's a computer. It's got to record it, write it onto its hardware, and then compare it to the word Alexa.
Otherwise, it's not going to hear the word when you say it if it's not already listening.
Yeah. So all that stuff, that's what your phone, Siri, your Apple is doing the same thing, listening for the keyword Siri, and it's got to compare every word you say against that keyword. If it's not, then it ignores it, but it records it. Yeah.
Even if you don't have it turned on, me and the wife have sat there, and sometimes we'll just shut the phones off when we're traveling and driving because you just don't want them bothering us.
Yeah.
You keep it for if you have to turn it on if you got to make a phone call a tow truck or something. But then we'll get where we're going, turn the phone on, and what we've been talking about or going, if we go camping again, maybe we should buy one of these. I'll turn the phone on, and the first thing it'll do is give me an ad for what we were just discussing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That happens to me and my wife all the time, too.
And they've been saying that they listen to you even when they're off because they changed them. You can't even take the battery out of them anymore.
Yeah.
You used to be able to take the battery out of them. Now you can't because then it'll never shut off. But hey, I'm waiting. All that's too crazy. Give me the alien invasion now. It's time. I'm ready. Let's head off to that other planet with whoever's coming here. Oh, what happened? Oh. Nope, all good, I think. Oh, it looked like something froze for a second.
Yeah, your video's glitching out, Mike, on my end. How do I look on your end?
It's looking okay on mine. It's blinking, but it's... I'll just do this quickly. Turn off the feed.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
There we go. I just clicked the feed off and on again for the camera.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a good example, me and my wife were just driving, and she saw a new Volkswagen van. They just come out with new vans, a new style of van, and she says, "What's that? I've never seen one of those before." And I looked at it, and hell, I don't know. I don't know what it, and she said, "Oh, that's a new Volkswagen. Look at the emblem." And I looked, okay, oh, that's a really neat looking van, And then we got home, and I look at my phone, and of course I'm getting advertisements for Volkswagen vans. And I got them for about 3 weeks after that. Never seen it before. I had no idea what it was when I looked at it. Never talked about a Volkswagen van. Don't care. I drive pickups and, in my old Chevy work van. But, it's just not my cup of tea. I'm not going to talk about a Volkswagen van. But my wife happened to talk about one because she saw one, and then I'm getting advertisements for them for 3 weeks. That's just blatant. They're spying on us. And there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah.
And we let them. Yeah. That's the thing. Nobody reads the terms of service for things.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to get one of those Librem 5s. Have you seen that?
No.
It's called a Librem 5. It's an American phone. But it's got kill switches for the mic and the camera, and you can take the battery out, and it's made to be fixed. So, you can order a new screen. If you crack the screen, you can order a new screen and put it in there. But yeah, it's really cool. And from what I've heard, I want one. I can't afford one yet, but yeah, that's my next. Hopefully, maybe I might get one this Christmas.
Gonna have to check that out because I like the idea of being able to take out the battery, fix your own phone.
Yeah. And it doesn't run on that Android or that Apple crap either. It's a Linux.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's supposed to be completely secure and not track you and all that. But then you can turn all the stuff off with hard switches, just in case. Just if you want to feel better about it, just turn off the mic and the camera and stuff, until you need them. But yeah, that's more my cup of tea than this Google shit or that Apple shit.
Yeah, I kind of miss the days when there wasn't cell phones everywhere.
Oh man. Yeah, I really miss the days when there weren't cell phones.
Once upon a time, the only people that had cell phones were cell phones and pagers, and it was doctors and drug dealers.
Yeah, you're right.
They were the only ones.
Yeah.
So you knew who was who based by whether they were wearing a suit or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was nobody else had one. Nobody else could afford one at the time.
And back then, it was okay. We weren't dying for something to waste our time on, dying for a screen to look at. We just had fun doing other stuff.
Well, and they were literally just
the same thing with cash money. Back then, it wasn't a big deal to spend cash, to carry cash around,
I haven't looked lately. I was going to look at how many purchase transactions in the States are cash versus electronic. Because I looked recently in Canada, and 85% of all transactions in Canada are still cash.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I think it's 85% are digital electronic in the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, most people here are still cash.
No, we all use debit cards, and cash is a rare thing now. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I find that unusual. That's another problem. Is one thing is people now, they used to, if you wanted to buy something, you saved up and you bought it.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to wait and save up anymore. I tell you, that's the one thing. My daughter's 20, and I've been trying to teach her good money habits. I'm like, because if you know them now, you're not going to be struggling later.
Yeah.
Right? Save up and buy. Save up and do this. And she's like, oh, a bank offered me a credit card. I'm like, turn it down. You're not ready. Literally, as soon as she turned 18, they were offering her like $5,000 credit card. I'm like, turn it down. You're not ready. They're just trying to hook you now.
Yeah.
Wait until you've been going for a while.
Once they do that, once they get their hooks in you, that's it.
Yep.
Then you're floating that you're living on that credit, floating credit card to credit card and swapping balances and doing all that stuff for the rest of your life.
Oh, nobody saves anymore and buys something. And I have a big issue when people talk about the inflation and the price of everything going up. If less people purchased on credit and more people saved up to buy something, prices would start going down.
Yeah.
I believe. Because everybody just buys willy-nilly. And the only thing you should ever be buying on, well, my dad always said the only thing you should be buying on credit is a house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's true.
Maybe now a vehicle too. Back in his day, you could buy a brand new truck for 1 year's salary. You can't do that anymore unless you have a really good paying job. The new truck I want by myself one day is like $115,000. So, forget that. But
the institutions, the government and these banking institutions and all this stuff, they like to, I don't know, it's just a big lie about how complex and complicated all this stuff is, right? When it is really that simple. Don't use credit. Save up and buy what you want. Buy from as locally as you can. Buy from, and then that money circulates around and it comes back to you. If we're sending all of our, 80% of our money to China, they don't send it back. You know what I mean? That money doesn't come back to us. Those purchases don't enrich our community. It's just more shit that we're going to throw in the landfill. But if you buy your local honey from your local honey, bee farmer or whatever, and then that bee farmer goes and buys a car from a local distributor, and then that car salesman goes and buys a house from someone like you, or buys a house and then you build another house that provides jobs for you because people are buying local honey. It's really that simple. But they've got so many people fooled into believing that it's some kind of mystical, magical, convoluted stuff that people like me and you, we just can't understand it, Yeah,
and that's where they get wrong. They lie to you so much when it comes to that. Yeah. Because if you shop local, for at least half of everything you do, you shop local. You boost your own local community, your own local economy, and everybody locally is better off.
Yeah.
You got it. You can't have it completely closed off, or you're going to wind up into the same problems everyone else has when they try and close a system and not deal with anybody else.
Yeah.
But,
oh, yeah.
That never works. We've seen that happen over and over again. Ha, Soviet Russia.
Yeah.
But you go local as much as you can.
Yeah.
And we did that with jobs too, and because I travel building all the time. And we get to a town, and it was a tiny little town, and for the most part, they did not have the ability to supply us. But they had a local lumber yard.
Okay.
And we had a big supplier that we bought from, would ship anywhere that we were. But then we went to the local guys and went, hey, if we order this from you, what's your price? Yeah. We're not going to need it for like 4 months, so you'll have time to bring it in because we know you're... And they gave us a quote, and it was literally only 3% more than the other supplier. So we went, you know what, we're going to buy it off of them because when the goodwill it gives us in town is amazing. We're going to be there for a couple years. You know? And we bought it off the local guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and the local guys are appreciative. They appreciate the work. They appreciate the business. Some big corporation off in the distance that are just, they're just shipping stuff all over the world, and they, pallet up a bunch of lumber and go drop it off in some warehouse. They don't appreciate shit. They don't care,
And you get an added thing because we'd sit there and it would be months later, and I'd call them from the site and be like, hey, do you guys have these types of screws in? Yeah. And they'd be like, oh, what do you need? And we're like, well, we're not sure, but it's going to be some. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And they'd actually just show up, and they brought like a big box of like 200 pounds of the screws we're looking for. And they dropped it off, and they said, use what you need, and then we'll just bring it back and weigh it. And we'll charge you what you use, because that's how you buy that stuff, is by weight if you're buying lots, right? But they would just drive it over. Yeah. You didn't have to go get it. You just ask, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, no problem. And they'll send the kid down in the truck, or, the forklift drive over with whatever you wanted on it's on a pallet for you. And it made things easier.
And then you go to or used to be able to go to a mom and pop store, and I've been in there and asked them for something, hey, do you have whatever item? No, but I can get it for you from now on. If you're going to be coming back, I'll have one for you. Okay. Yeah. Just, keep them in stock for me. And they will do that for you. Nowadays, you go to a 7-Eleven or whatever, any national chain of corporate bullshit, and they don't give that kind of service. They don't care, No. They just there's no,
and the knowledge of what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
Like if you went to a mom and pop store, or a local owner mechanic shop, or the mechanic owns the place, or like you said, the hardware store, you can go in and be like, I need to fix my toilet's not working. I need to fix this. And the guy would be like, oh, you need one of these parts. What's the brand name you have, or what kind do you have? Okay, this is what'll fit in it. Yeah. And they know. You try and go and ask a question at any of the big box stores, and people will be like, I don't know. Yeah. Or it'll be, oh, that's not my department. Yeah. You're standing in front of the product. Yeah. How is this not your department? Like, where are you supposed to be working then,
My niece worked at Walmart when she was younger, and she told me that they literally just trained the people to, if a customer had a question for them, they told them just to read off the back of the box. That was all the training they would give them. Just read read off the back of the box and read that to the customer, and that's it. They don't do anything else. So yeah, it's ridiculous how little knowledge they have of anything, even their own section of the store. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I went actually that office chair that I got. I had got it at a Walmart. They were having a sale, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get it there. And I got it, and I get to the till, and of course it rings in at not the same price.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, hey, that's not the price. He's like, but that's what it says. I'm like, that's not the price on the shelf. And he's like, well, he called his supervisor. Supervisor comes and literally says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, the price on the shelf is different. And he's like, no, that can't be. You just read it wrong. I said, no. He's like, well, you go figure it out, he said, and he walked away.
Holy shit.
So I went to the shelf where all their chairs were, and I pulled all the price tags off every shelf and took them all to the front and went, this is the one with the barcode and number that matches this. Yeah. All these are different, and now you have no price tags. I got my price. I paid my price, and then we leave. And, you know, and then the wife and daughter are like, do you feel better now? I'm like, actually, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Thanks for asking.
I do, because how do you not know your job? Or if you don't know, say, I don't know, but I'll go get this person. They do.
Yeah.
That bugs me so much. Younger people.
And those people like that, those managers and stuff, they're just, I don't know if you want to call it just laziness or whatever. They're just lazy, but they have the authority to give you whatever price on that thing. They can change the price right there. Whoever that was, they could have changed the price there. I've seen it happen. If you catch the right person at the right time, they'll just change the price for you. Take, 30 seconds. Oh, okay. Somebody who actually does care, and they're far and few between. But the managers, they do have that power. They do have that authority. They just don't give a shit, and they're so lazy that they don't want to be bothered with it. They don't want to do their job.
Nobody takes pride in a job well done anymore, no matter what it is they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I was on my one live the other week, I was talking and I said, I physically can't do the same construction I was before. I physically can't do it. I thought I had 10 more years left. I don't. And they're like, so what do you do now? I said, well, I work at a gas station now. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, and I do this, and people are like, oh, and I'm like, no, I'm going to go in and help this. I'm going to do this. I'm like, it don't matter what I'm doing, what type of job I got. I take pride in doing it the absolute best I can. Yeah. And about 5 people in the chat right away, just Gen X work ethic. And I'm like, yeah, very much.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of these
I wouldn't do that. They don't pay enough. I'm like, when you consider the how hard the work is and what I get paid, it's quite fair.
Mm-hmm.
Don't starve. Bills are all paid. Got some extra cash. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I'm going to do the best job at it I can.
A lot of these kids are being taught that these jobs, whatever job, a lot of jobs are just beneath them. And they have no job experience. It's not like, they're doctors and lawyers and they have to go clean toilets. No, they're just, they don't want to be a gas station attendant right out of high school. They don't want to pick some apples or oranges, or anything with zero job experience. And they don't realize how much experience, just life experience they would get from doing those jobs. How much appreciation they will have for the good job that they will get one day,
If you can take a really crappy job and do it well, you don't have to like the job, but at least take some pride in doing it well. Yeah. Then you get a better job and even a better job and one you really love, and you'll do it really well. I mean, if you take pride in doing a really crappy job as good as you can, it means you're going to be good, because no one's going to take you for a premium type job that everybody wants now.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to even put in effort just to move papers across your desk, or, go wipe a shelf down when it needs cleaning, or, my God.
And that's another thing, is that these kids are coddled, and they're led to believe that they deserve a certain kind of job or whatever, and then they go out into the world and nobody cares. You know, the world doesn't. The world does expect more from them than they're used to giving.
The world's a lot colder than you think it is when you get out there.
Yeah.
That and a big one these days is, I don't know when it started officially with the younger people, when they come out of school, they came out with a degree and think that on day one, they should be making the same amount of money as somebody that's been doing that job for 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're like, I'm like, no. You forget it.
Not
used
at all.
to ran into it with some of the younger guys when doing the construction. And my two bosses still work tools, even though they were in their 60s. Because as soon as you stop, that's how things get away on you, even though they own the company. When you stop being down with the guys, things get out of control and you lose your shirt.
Yeah.
But we were sitting there and we had this young guy who was probably about 29, you know, and he'd brag all the time. He's 29. He's got 4 kids. He just, you know, bought a house. And we're like, well, that's good. That's good. That's great. Yeah. But he would always argue with us about stuff on the job. And he'd be like, no, this is what the way you do it. This is the way I learned in school. I'm like, that's not how this one is done.
No,
it's not how the engineer has it laid out. You know, and he's like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. And you're like, he's like, I've been doing it for 9 years. I've been doing it for 25.
Yeah.
Rick and Edward been doing it for 40, and neither of us know everything still. You know,
yeah.
You know, there comes a time where it's like, no, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, when you get in there with older people with more experience, and I still try to do that. I still do that today. Or even a younger person, honestly, with more experience in an area than me. I just keep my mouth shut and try to learn something, you know? A lot of times, your ideas might be wrong. It's better to sit back when you go into a new field of something or with a new group of people, kind of sit back in the cut and figure out what's going on before you start throwing your 2 cents in there and end up looking like an idiot.
Get a feel for it. See where everybody's at. You know, let them do their thing. It don't matter, especially if you're the new person. Yeah. Or you haven't done it before. It's and you're around people that have. Learn. Put down that pride wall a little bit that you carry, that I know more. That's the one that used to bug me when I was younger, is somebody would automatically, because they were older, knew better. And we kind of fall into that trap a little bit ourselves. I catch myself sometimes. I try not to do it. But it is kind of a point of pride that you made it this far. You're allowed to wag your finger now and then and go, I'm older than you. You listen to me. But that's all good.
A lot of these colleges and education systems and stuff now, dental hygienists and all that, probably dentists as well. That used to be just strictly learned on the job training, like carpentry or anything else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You used to just get hired by a dentist, and he would teach you how to do that stuff. Maybe he would send you to a school to learn a new technique or new technology or something, you know. But you didn't have to spend $80,000 on an education to learn how to clean teeth and stuff, because a lot of times younger people will go and spend that $80,000 and end up in all kinds of debt, and then get to an actual dentist's office and realize that they don't know what the hell's going on. They were either taught on ancient equipment that is no longer being used, or they were taught on the most cutting edge equipment that won't be being used in actual dentist offices for another 15, 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
except
they've got
for
to
the odd
relearn
place.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that whole education, they could have just, walked into a dentist office straight out of high school and been in the same exact spot and saved 80 grand.
I asked my dentist, actually, the one time about how many years now is it to go to school? And he said when he finished, it was 7.
Yeah.
7 years to be a dentist. Because it used to be 1 year of med school and then dentistry, but now it's 3 years of medical school and now dentistry.
Ah.
And I said, oh, wow. And he's like, plus I have to go off 6 weeks out of every year to learn all the new equipment that comes out.
Yeah.
He's like, so if it comes to the place or we're forced to upgrade to it, he's like, I know how to use it. And I'm like, wow. He's like, yeah. I'm like, geez.
Yeah. The education system has turned into just a corporate money-making machine now, as far as I'm concerned.
I think a bunch of them don't want to, or a lot of the people are graduating without actually earning their degrees now in a lot of these things. Yeah. A few years back, I was reading a white paper put out by a bunch of professors from several of the Ivy League universities. They did it up together, talking about the state of college graduates and the students that they have. And they said they had given up on actually grading their students anymore and just pass them all, because they said they got tired of no matter whatever the person had, whatever grade they got, 2 days later, one of the parents would be in their office.
Yeah.
Screaming and yelling at them. And they're like, your kid's 20 years old. But no, and they just got tired of having parents call or the family's lawyer calling and threatening lawsuits. And
oh my goodness, for a 20-year-old kid in college, it's not like acting like they're in kindergarten, 5-year-olds in kindergarten. Holy shit. Yeah.
Well, for a few years, I used to work for the corporate office of Denny's. And ran some of the restaurants. Mm-hmm. And I had an employee, I had her parents call me up and threaten to sue me because I wouldn't write a letter of recommendation for her new job when they were moving. She'd only worked for us for a week. She'd only been there a week, and then the family was moving. And yeah, they're like, well, we're going to sue. And I'm like, okay. Like, yeah. I said if she had been here 2 months, then I would have something to go off of. She literally been here a week, worked 3 days, and you're going to sue me for choosing to not write a letter of recommendation for her next employer. Some people are just
stupid. I mean, that's just stupidity. I mean, that's just dumb. I don't know how else to say it. That's just dumb.
It floored me.
Yeah.
You know, like, did you really? I mean, on top of that, if you really went to go through with that suit, because the first thing I did when she did that, I hung up the phone and I immediately fired off an email to corporate and to the board and everything that we'd just been threatened with a civil lawsuit. Yeah. And this is why. And all they said was, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, does this family really want to do that and spend that kind of money thinking that this is going to go anywhere?
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, I haven't even seen her. She's been with the company for a week. And I've never actually seen her at work because she just was never there on a time when I was there.
Yeah.
I said, that happens in a 24-hour business.
Yeah.
I said, I can't write no letter. But no, we're going to sue you. That was my very first experience with like overprotective parents and a kid that had no consequences to take for anything.
Yeah.
Threatening to be sued because I wouldn't write a letter.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I just want to go back to simpler times. I want to rewind my cassette tapes with pencils again. I want.
Oh, me too. It's gotten so complicated.
I want an old car with the 8-track adapter to put my cassette tape in. You know, I just want to rewind, cut some of this junk out. I could do so well. You know, I wouldn't. It would take me a couple days, but I would adjust if the internet
Oh,
went down.
yeah.
I know how to go to the library,
Yeah.
you know, read a
Yeah.
newspaper again. They'd start printing them all over again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. All right. I miss the smell of the library.
I wonder how many actual physical jobs have disappeared because of everything that's just on the internet now.
Oh, man. It'd be unbelievable. How many just printed books now? Because everybody reads books. The comic books are all digital now. All books are digital. I bet you that the amount of physical paper books being sold is just dropped, by, I'm no telling, 90% or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably that high, if not more.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, and I'm like, I don't know. I read a book. I like turning the page.
Yeah.
I like putting the book down. It's better reading off paper. And I've had times where I've sat down with a 900-page book one morning, and actually it was autobiography. It was the Mick Foley's autobiography, Have a Nice Day, that he wrote about his wrestling career. I started reading it at 9 a.m. Christmas morning, and I closed it at 11:30 that night. I never even got off the couch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
You enjoyed a book when you read it for 14 hours straight, cover to cover.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I actually heard that, I read an article about Amazon and their Kindles, and they've got that whole format locked up, so you don't own those books anymore. That's another thing about ownership that I can go off on. But the thing that really bothers me is that they'll just go in and edit the books after you've bought it. You've owned it for a year, and they'll just go in and rewrite a couple chapters that don't agree with the narrative that's being spun around today. You know what I mean? So they'll just change your book. Yeah, that is really creepy to me.
Oh, well, yeah. When you said the whole narrative going in, you don't actually own that anymore. That comes with Apple, and you got Amazon Prime and all that. When it comes to the music or the movies, some of them it'll be like, well, you can rent the movie, or you can wait 4 months till it's free, or you can pay $24.99 and buy it.
Yeah,
and then 6 weeks later they take it out of the system and it's gone, and you don't own it anymore, but you paid to purchase it.
Yeah,
and it's not. There's no other option anymore, because what was it, last month they announced they are no longer making DVDs.
Yeah.
They're completely eliminating DVDs.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to, except for maybe independent studios with that niche market, like the records kept going.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to be digital, and you only own it until they decide you don't own it anymore.
Yeah.
And they take it away.
If you can't hold it in your hand, you don't own it.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's changed over the last 15 or so years. I remember, and the prices keep going up. That's one thing with inflation. All right, let's just say a movie, Fight Club. I bought that movie in 2005 or something like that on Google Play, paid, got it on sale for $3.99 or something. You know what I mean? And
probably like $25
was
now.
$7.99 now, and it's been sitting on that same server for 20 years. They don't have to produce plastic. It's not like the price of plastic for the DVDs go up or anything. It's just sitting on a server. How can inflation raise the price of that thing?
Yeah.
Of that movie, that digital movie that's just, all they do is stream you a copy of it. You know what I mean? How can they justify jacking up the prices of that digital content that's already been made 20, 40 years ago, Well, and it's just sitting on a server waiting to be downloaded.
It was like the streaming services. Take Netflix, case in point. I'll pick on them because they were the first. they were a nice cheap price, and they had everything because they were the first. So everybody licensed their stuff to them.
Yeah.
So I get they lost some whenever, but now everybody wants their own. Every network, every studio, everybody has their own.
Yeah.
So if you want to watch everything now, it costs twice as much as it did having premium cable back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
But you have all that, and people are like, yeah, but it's not expensive. There's no commercials. Well, the prices kept going up. They're like, well, why do the prices keep going up? I'm like, because they've hit the market. They've saturated. They got their main. They're not going to get much more than their 280 million subscribers around the world. So they got to keep making profit. So that goes up. And now there's commercials.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
You know, and they're like, oh, there's commercials.
Yeah.
And they're like, but if you don't want the commercials for an extra $7 a month, we'll remove the commercials. Yeah. And then they turned around and went and removed and said, well, we're getting rid of the commercial free tier when they moved. So you're now paying that extra money and still having commercials. And
here's the thing. Here's the thing that really gets me about all this, and this is across the board with every big corporation, but since we're picking on Netflix, it's not because Netflix doesn't raise their price because they're going to go broke. They're not raising their prices because they're walking some kind of tightrope line, on solvency or something. They're raising their prices because they must increase their profits next quarter. That's it. They can't even allow their profits to remain stagnant. We made $20 billion in profit last year, $20 billion. And it looks like we're going to make $20 billion again next year. Oh, we can't have that. We got to make $23 billion next year. That's where it comes down to, they're screwing you. You know what I mean? Because they could sit with the $20 billion in profit for the next 40 years and still be rich. But they can't.
But that's an issue I have with a lot of times with publicly traded companies.
Yeah.
Because if they don't do that, then they get sued for not trying to increase profits so much every year. The shareholders sue them.
Yeah, by law, they have to. They have to increase profits by law.
And if you were...
That means any gray area, any kind of gray law where they're screwing over us, but it's kind of gray, well, they'll go ahead and do that. Oh, yeah. Because it is flat out black and white law that they must make more money for the company than they did this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I have never liked the idea when they sit there and say, well, they took a loss this year. Yeah. And a lot of times, and people are like, oh, they lost money. No, they didn't lose money.
No.
What they call a loss is last year they made $20 billion in profit in January. This January they made $19 billion in profit. So they call that a loss of $1 billion.
Yeah.
It's not a loss. You just didn't make as much profit.
Yeah. Any profit is a gain.
Yeah.
But they don't look at it like that. They don't word it like that. They want you to feel sorry for that $1 billion corporation.
Yeah, because then they can say, "Oh, we're losing money, so this is, we're going to have to look at changing the format or raising rates, or we're going to have to put in 5 commercials now instead of 3." Once they did that, I got rid of all the streaming services. Well, when Disney Plus first came out, I decided to give it a try because they exclusived all their stuff, and they had been buying up some studios, so there was some things I wanted to see if they had them, and I got them, and they were billing me every month, and then after 6 months they all of a sudden took out the 6 months they already billed me for. They took out all at once again.
Oh no.
Saying that they didn't bill me. So I called them up trying to figure this out, and they realized that they had overbilled, and I said, refund my money. And they're like, oh, we don't have anything built in our system for refunding payments.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure you do.
Yeah. Write a check.
Yeah. They're like, no, sir. It's just you have the service and we'll extend your service for another 6 months for you as they called it a free gift, even though they already took the money.
Free gift that you paid for.
Yeah. So I paid for 6 months, and then you took the money a second time, and then you're going, oh no, for your inconvenience, we'll give you a free gift of 6 months. Only if you keep an active card on there, though, which they would automatically auto-renew again. I'm like, forget it, you guys. I'm like, I told them, I said, forget it. I hung up, I called my bank, and I challenged the charge.
Yeah, okay.
and the bank gave it back. So,
all right.
Yeah, I will say that. Anytime I've had to challenge something, Capital One has been really good.
Okay.
Like they have actually, before they even talked to the company, I'm like, no, I spoke to them, and they're like, okay, and they would like reverse the thing right then and there while I was still on the phone.
Oh, that's good.
And go, just to let you know, in 6 months when we're done investigating, if we do rule in their favor, then we will take it back. I'm like, no, that's okay, but they would automatic, and never once did they not rule in my favor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll give them credit for that. People dump on them all the time, but I've never had an issue with them.
All right, Mike, it's starting to get late here.
All right.
Over here in Florida. So
yeah, I should probably start getting ready to do something. I think the wife's actually home now.
Oh, okay.
She got done work at actually. Yep. Oh, shit. She's at the door. The door's locked. She doesn't have a house key.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah. 1 sec. That's okay. She can smoke her smokes while she's out there. All right. Well.
All right, Mike. Thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Hey, man. It's been fun. It's been fun.
We have to do this again, dude.
We absolutely do, and we'll tie into more just nostalgia and then maybe some conspiracy stuff.
All right.
I like that.
All right.
The conspiracy theories of the day.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great to me, man.
All right, man.
All right. Have a good one, Mike. Thank
you too.
Buddy.
We'll see you later, everybody. So long.
All right. And that was Mike at On the Mic with Gen X. That was a fun conversation. I hope y'all enjoyed it too. And we're going to leave you there with that. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming a member, I'll leave that link down in the description, or you can head over to the channel page and become a member that way. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can do so by clicking on that super thanks button down there. Or you can head over to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee and buy me a cup of coffee. I appreciate those of you who do that. Thank you very much. If you're interested in Gen X gear, we got some pretty cool stuff over there at Redbubble. Gen X Thinks and Gen X branded stuff, t-shirts, coffee mug stickers, all kinds of cool stuff like that, hoodies. But I'll leave that link down in the description for any of you who are interested. If you can't or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing these videos on your social media. That helps out a hell of a lot, so thank you very much to those of you who do that. I really do appreciate it. If you have any ideas for future episodes of Gen X Thinks, please put those down in the comments. Or you can email us, and the email is genxthinks@gmail.com. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.